UFOs never seem to go out of style. We want to believe in them so badly that, against all reason, we do.
If you prime someone and you tell them what to look for, chances are they'll find it.
Movies and television love to sell us UFOs. Has this preconditioned us into seeing and believing in them?
I got snarling, fanged aliens, and then I got gentle, little cute aliens.
Yep, UFOs are everywhere you want to be. And so tonight, we figured that we'd identify some unidentified flying objects and find out who among us is more likely to think space invaders.
Dude, what the hell is that?
First, we create our very own balloon contraption designed to look like a UFO. Then we engineer a massive UFO hoax to convince a couple of average Joes and Janes that an alien spacecraft has crashed in the desert.
Oh my God! Crap. I know I, for one, was like, wow, if this is a UFO, I'm psyched.
So we looked up past the wreckage and saw the gray, and I was ready to make him take me home with him.
If you've got a thing for little green men, or want to figure out who in your family just might, we've got a show for you. So come along as we shamelessly manipulate belief systems in UFOs put to the test. Considering how rational we humans are about most things, our dogged insistence that UFOs exist seems downright bizarre. It's a little like buying into the reality of the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy. Yet, decade after decade, our encounters with UFOs and their inhabitants have been the stuff of newspaper headlines and an entire government conspiracy industry.
Look, they're overtaking us.
Elaborate cover-ups of the existence of Earthling-obsessed, orifice-probing, crop-circling aliens have long dominated tales of UFO visitation. And of course, when you ask for proof, you tend to get wild-eyed descriptions of Area 51 and grainy photos of what look to be hubcaps tossed in the air.
People really like to attribute intentionality to things. They like to think that there's an intelligence or a reason behind things. Often that's true, but a lot of the time it's not. Random coincidence does happen, and you've got to be able to accept that sometimes things just happen for no reason.
Are UFOs mostly an invention of fantasy-prone individuals who have read too many tabloids? Experts seem to agree that our brain can talk us into pretty much anything, even spaceships buzzing our backyard.
The human brain is basically an excellent pattern recognition system. That's how we see, that's how we hear, we process these sensory streams, and we find the patterns in them. But sometimes there are no patterns, and that's where the human system breaks down sometimes.
In other words, the mind giveth and the mind taketh away. That's especially true when it comes to UFOs.
Your brain fills in the blanks without really your permission or conscious recognition, and suddenly you've seen something that may or may not have actually existed.
Even intelligent people, then, can trick themselves into seeing UFOs. But are there other markers for gullibility? We wanted to find out more about how our minds fill in the blanks, so we created a UFO hoax. It was an experiment designed to persuade regular folk to believe they're witnessing an actual UFO crash, followed by a genuine close encounter of the third kind. Welcome to the Silver Saddle Resort, located in a remote area of the Mojave Desert near Edwards Air Force Base. On most days, this place is packed with vacationers and adventurers who get off on the barren nothingness of the Mojave Desert. But we took over the whole resort, and so now the place feels very creeped out and a bit like the set of Plan 9 from outer space. That's just the way we like it. Not that we wanted our test subjects to be uncomfortable from the get-go. We lured them here with a casting call ruse for a purported new reality show called Desert Commandos.
The goal of this experiment is to get the participants out here into the desert to see a UFO and to have it crash. And the way that we did this was to have them under the guise that they were coming for a Desert Commando show and that they were going to come out here and do activities in the desert.
Yes, it turns out that people will believe pretty much anything. So we put a shotgun into their hands and convinced them that these weapons were going to serve a valuable purpose in their Mojave adventure.
I'm ready for my close-up.
Safety one right now. Safety.
Yes, The ruse is loose. The con is on. And in case you didn't catch the name, it's misdirection.
Whoa!
Meanwhile, our fiendish plot to stage a phony UFO crash was coming together right on schedule. A few broken pieces of flying saucer here.
There'll be a puddle of bubbling green ooze.
A little green slime there, and voila. While our test subjects fervently believe the only reason they're here is to try out for a reality show, they'll instead be answering questions about human gullibility and how our mind can play tricks on us. Our production team will help make that happen. It turns out that your intelligence, or lack of it, doesn't necessarily predict your likelihood of being gullible. But if you like to fantasize, well, that's a whole different ballgame.
I am defining a high fantasy-prone person as someone with a higher intuitive base, and a high reality-prone is someone who is a high sensing base or a high sensory type who wants the data, who needs the data to make sense out of reality.
Sally, this is a question
We wanted an even mix of reality-based and fantasy-prone guinea pigs for our experiment, so we designed a questionnaire to separate them out.
This is exactly what scientists do in trying to figure out how to make this judgment, and you apparently hit on a very useful idea about the degree to which these people are imaginative.
The questions we asked them were pretty evenly split between the agonizingly mundane.
Do you have a driver's license? Yes.
And queries that delve deep into their psyches to determine whether or not they possessed an overeager imagination.
In a battle between Samantha from Bewitched and Jeannie from My Dream of Jeannie, who would win and why?
I think I dream of Jeannie because she's not afraid to expose herself. And physically.
Samantha would win because the genie is at someone's beck and call.
Samantha would win. She's my favorite. I actually was her for Halloween.
Definitely Jeannie. She's cuter.
Probably the girl that moved her nose.
What are some preparations that you might make to defend yourself from a dragon?
Dragon.
Can grown men still be made to believe in dragons? With a little positive persuasion, you betcha.
A dragon? I don't know.
Underground. Dragon can't get underground.
Get a bomb or something.
A Bible.
Bunch of guns.
Ideally run.
Poison gas.
If I was living around a dragon, I'd think of a big metal wall.
Having the dragons around you and their firepower and their strength, their size, it would be very exciting and sexy to be riding them.
I think fantasy-prone people have a faster ignition into their imagination than, let's say, a high reality or a high sensory-prone person. They're able to fill in the colors faster on a picture versus we want to get the facts right before we fill in the pictures.
So what we did is, we took the cumulative length of their answers and used the information for our own evil purposes. We wondered if there really was any correlation between a propensity to fantasize and the odds of being duped by a UFO hoax. And if there wasn't, why not?
The magic orb, I think, could help my sex life out a bit.
Although it seems likely.
Today we're going to start off with just some trap shooting, some easy stuff.
Just what any of this had to do with playing war games in the desert, no one bothered to ask. Besides, once they got a feel of that cold 12-gauge steel in their paws, nothing else appeared to matter. We totaled up the cumulative time that they all yammered on about their fantasies to assess their susceptibility. Here's how it all came out. Jeff more or less kept his mouth shut. He's grounded in bedrock. Betsy also scored low with a time of 140, not a runaway imagination. Rose, on the other hand, chattered on for nearly 5 minutes. She could be a fantastic voyager waiting to happen. We'll have to see. Stephen is a musician. Creativity is high, but he keeps it on a tight leash. Jason? Our guess is that he's ready to slay dragons and welcome wayward UFOs. Stephanie was very creative, but seemed to limit her periods of free thought. George undoubtedly has vivid plans for building his own magic orb. He went on for almost 8 minutes and probably already sees Martians in his sleep. Allison has a colorful and vivid fantasy life. With nearly 9 minutes of description, she only stopped fantasizing when they shut the air conditioning off in the building. We selected an even mix of reality-based and fantasy-prone subjects, and then tricked them all into coming up to try out for a non-existent reality show. Little do our marks know that in mere hours, they'll be transported to a galaxy far, far away, at least in their heads.
The first stage of the experiment was to overwhelm them with distractions, get them thinking about what they were supposed to be here to do. So we had them going out skeet shooting immediately, looking over their schedule of events for the next day, which had all kinds of crazy extreme activities.
Want something with more power. Give me a machine gun, something
doing?
with more power.
As night falls, our people will be trading in their firearms for a fiery UFO crash as our hoax takes flight.
Look, there it is again. Look, 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 look. Oh my God.
Today we're going to start off with just some trap shooting, some easy stuff to get you.
So far, we've had brief meetings with the 8 people we're about to use as guinea pigs in our UFO hoax. We've determined their abilities to fantasize, and now we're going to find out if that's a marker for gullibility. They thought they were trying out for a new reality adventure show. Instead, they were falling right into our UFO hoax trap.
So the crash area could be...
The goal of this experiment was to convince people that they were actually witnessing a UFO crashing in the desert, that they'd come out for some different reason, and as luck would have it, something from outer space had happened to crash land near them, and they would have a chance to be the first on the scene.
But first, we want to crawl even further inside their heads to make sure that our ruse catches them when they're most off guard. And that means infiltrating their ranks.
I am the mole in the show. That is my job. And I basically lead the participants, kind of try to direct them in the way that we need to be going with this experiment.
For all our people know, our mole is merely another shotgun-toting commando.
Whoa!
Meanwhile, things are proceeding on schedule out in the barren nothingness of the desert. The UFO crash site has to be arranged just so. Once darkness falls, our commandos will see an explosion in the sky roughly a mile away. But how could we be sure they would believe this was a UFO and not just some wayward missile?
One of the things we were going to use to make sure that they knew that it was a UFO and not some kind of other thing crashing in the desert was an actual UFO in the sky that we were going to fly along by towing it behind a car.
We took great care to make sure that the spacecraft looked like something they might have seen in a government conspiracy manual or on some cheesy UFO TV special, but no flying saucers. Some UFO sightings are more credible than others, if you consider someone making an honest mistake to be credible. They can be airplanes flying through fog, missile launches, and the most common UFO sighting of all, the planet Venus. Hollywood has a big hand in determining how people envision UFOs and aliens, of course. The showbiz community fashioned our common images of space vehicles and beings infiltrating the collective public imagination.
There is no limit to what an alien can be. It's what your mind, what people bring to it. I have aliens with 3 eyes, I have aliens with stork's eyes, I have big fat aliens with little pear-shaped heads, I got living brains with eyes on them, I got snarling fanged aliens, and then I got gentle little cute aliens. I can design from whimsical to frightening, and depending on the requirements, the specific requirements of a script. I guess the most popular vision of an alien really took form in Whitley Schreiber's Communion. Then the classic gray, as we call it.
This is the type of alien creature we chose for the final beat of our UFO hoax. Meanwhile, for our first act, we studied UFO images that people have captured on film and video. We're here to tell you that in no cases were the UFOs actual ships from neighboring worlds operated by alien life forms. Instead, they were signal flares or parachutes or possibly even weather balloons. In other words, the UFO phenomenon can essentially be pegged to poor eyesight. A decent pair of glasses and it's goodbye conspiracy theories.
The flying UFO was made out of some weather balloons filled with helium so it would float, and laced with glow sticks to break up its outline and make it recognizable at night as some kind of flying shape that wasn't necessarily balloon-shaped. And it was attached to a truck with parachute line so that we could tow it along.
Will people really believe that an inflated piece of synthetic material poses a potential threat to our civilization? Might they actually embrace it as a visitor from another planet?
Once we made sure that we could fly the UFO in a safe fashion, we took it out to the actual city, to a gas station, and so that we could test it out in front of some actual subjects that weren't familiar with any of the planning that we'd done.
After outfitting vans and SUVs with hidden cameras in the gas station parking lot, our hokey hoax was moving along nicely. To gauge the impact of this primitive prank on the locals, we wired up our actors to communicate with our director.
Okay, Chris, you ready?
Okay, I got it on loud.
Finally, we haul out the star of our show, the one, the only balloon thing. Tie it to a car and ease it on down the road.
Okay, I'm approaching the stop sign, John.
How does it compare to the test in the desert?
Winds from last night when we were doing this in the desert, there was absolutely no winds. It was so calm, but it seems like here in town tonight there is a little bit of crosswind.
Get as far away from that lamp post
Yeah.
as you can.
Just when we think we've got it all figured out, God intervenes with a wind shift. A catastrophe is averted, but they'll have to change tactics. A member of the production team will try to steer the balloon by yanking and pulling on the parachute cord. It's like trying to control a hooked marlin at the end of 1,500 feet of fishing line.
Okay, stand by. We're getting ready to roll here, and we'll wait for the first suckers, guinea pig people to get in there.
We were determined to make this hoax fly yet, so to speak.
What in the hell is that?
I don't know.
People's reaction to the balloon UFO was pretty freaked out. We found it to be quite a success. People didn't know what it was. They hadn't seen anything like it before.
See the light right there?
Perhaps we were simply fortunate to be staging this illusion in the world's most trustful town, because our glorified kite was proving to be an unqualified people pleaser.
This one lady's like, what is it?
It's like, wow, what is that? And she laughed because I says, look, a UFO.
That's crazy.
Hello, damn.
That is mad crazy. And there it is again.
Whoa, hello.
You had me fooled for a while there. I had no idea what that was.
Right, what'd you think it was?
UFO.
Woo-hoo! Right on! At first it just looked like, you know, just something round, and as we got closer we could see the green glow. We got closer and closer, then it was moving. You know, and so then we got intrigued, and we're like, hey, we're gonna find out what this is, so.
The little town is showing signs of losing its collective marbles over our UFO. It was sort of like panic, if panic were suddenly to turn gleeful. Things begin to spin a bit out of control as our experiment turns into a local pep rally. We quickly have to shut it down over safety issues.
Yeah, because it's getting kind of not safe anymore because we're drawing too much attention.
Our friendly townsfolk took to our UFO scam with such enthusiasm, we almost felt guilty about it afterwards. Almost. Were they unusually gullible? Alas, it's not for us to judge. It's merely for us to deceive.
What in the hell is that?
I don't know.
If people would embrace a flim-flam this primitive, we imagine that our desert commandos would prove equally as vulnerable. But just to be sure, we imported our very own bogus UFO expert to further implant the concept of alien visitation in their minds. We continue our quest to discover whether some people are more suggestible than others when it comes to seeing and believing in UFOs. So far, amongst our 8 test subjects, we're guessing that Stephanie probably won't buy into our UFO hoax because she gave short answers to fantasy questions.
Yes.
Others, such as Rose, Allison, and George, who are more free-thinking, may be more accepting of our UFO hoax. Then again, our theories may be full of hot desert air. We'll soon see. Now it's time to add another ingredient to the mix, preconditioning. So we bring in our phony UFO expert, Zaz Brooks. Zaz is going to plant the seed that UFOs are common in these parts. He's actually an MIT student, so outthinking his fellow man tends to come naturally.
MIT has a reputation for being a very technical school, being very interested in science, but also for having a real sense of humor about it. And so our hacks are legendary in school circles. We like to pull pranks and make fun of lots of different things, including ourselves.
With a name like Zaz, you just know this guy isn't your garden variety hoaxster, and he's not. He's a grad schooler who whiles away his hours in MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab. He also edits the campus satire magazine and specializes in what are known as hacks.
Part of pulling a good hack is, that it should be grounded in reality for people that see it. It's got to amuse them on a personal level. And a good way to pull a prank or pull a hack is to include just enough real information to make it believable.
Part of the appeal of Zaz is that he speaks like a man of some sophistication, even as he thinks like a rambunctious teenager. But today, he's neither. He is instead UFO man.
A massive block of stone weighing more than a jumbo jet, positioned high up in a wall without breaking a sweat.
Before he puts his misdirection skills on display for real, Zaz thought he'd hone his technique at Venice Beach, Southern California's original home of freaks, geeks, and sneaks. Of course, selling UFOs to the Venice crowd is a little like peddling sunscreen in the Sahara.
All of a sudden, this thing went.
But it's still good practice.
There had to be UFOs.
Kind of like this one here with a flying formation. That one was taken in Nevada.
Yep, and they all split.
Zaz and his collection of bogus UFO photos blended right in against the Venice Beach backdrop of unreal reality. Nearly everyone who approached our guy believed his photos were somehow genuine. But Venice is one thing, the desert is quite another. The hacking opportunity of a lifetime awaits. Once at the Silver Saddle with our test subjects, Zaz takes to the lobby and tries to gently insert UFOs into the conversation.
I didn't want to make it seem like it was too orchestrated. So I was playing kind of a shy fanatic on the subject. I was writing a book on Australian UFOs, and I was out here on the west coast of the United States because of all the rash of sightings that had been seen up on the coast.
Remember, our test subjects all think they're trying out for an adventure game reality show. What you know and they don't know is that the shotguns are simply glorified props. They can't possibly imagine that a brainiac MIT hacker is in their midst, and he won't rest until he's hoodwinked each and every one of them. They'll eventually figure it out, but not before Zaz dazzles them with his utterly fabricated UFO smarts.
We slipped in the UFO expert. This was to begin to prime their expectations or the future possibility of seeing a UFO. And this is a very important step because it kind of introduces an idea in the middle of the sensory overload that if you hadn't had the overload, it might be processed a lot more logically and a lot more rationally, but because they were engaged otherwise, there was not that hold on, let me think about this rationally.
We met the guy from Australia, and he's brought UFO pictures. Can you focus that on there?
We didn't want to tip our hand by showing pictures that looked exactly like our UFO. Fortunately, that was pretty remote. Film and video are easy mediums to trick, but our UFO had already proved to be sophisticated enough to fool human eyes. But what about the impact of the UFO? With no real field test possible, the team had to use their best judgment in scale, distance, and pyro effect.
We were looking for a very specific reaction, not their first thought to be, my God, are there dead people out there? Is it humans that just crashed and have died or been terribly injured in it?
3, 2, 1.
We had a whole bunch of sparks and colored flames, and really the whole thing looked like fireworks. It was very close. The shockwave of the blast, you didn't really feel it. It just felt like someone setting up a big pack of fireworks out in the desert. So then we decided to move it further out and channel all of our energies into a big blast and less light and colored effects so that it would be like something just really ramming at high speed into the desert.
The final test explosion of our purported UFO won't make anybody forget the Nevada atomic bomb tests. But it did blow a crater in the desert floor measuring more than 10 feet across. Now it's nearly time to see if our own UFO experiment will prove a bomb or a bullseye. So how would we know if our test subjects believed this was a real UFO crash or not? We couldn't simply take their word for it. Luckily, we didn't have to. Our truth serum arrived in the form of a medical device called a life shirt. This piece of high-tech clothing measures human vital signs in real time.
This one connects the bands that are going to monitor your breathing.
Cool. The life shirts operate almost like lie detectors using small computers to store heart rate and breathing data that can be used to determine anxiety levels. We fed our testers some line about how they needed to wear these things because it'll help somehow in their adventure. In reality, of course, the garments promise to reveal exactly what's going through their minds and bodies as they race toward a UFO crash and a date with tabloid destiny.
There is no sharp division between the mind and the body. And when one is affected, so is the other. One of the great values of electronic measurements is that they give us a physiological factor to gauge against the psychological one and see what the relationships are.
The last thing we're going to do before we send you guys off, we're going to need 5 minutes of rest. Okay, so it's going to be 5 minutes. There's no talking, no watching TV, no reading, so just relax and enjoy your 5 minutes of peace. It may be the last.
Let's hope that our subjects get a good rest. They'll be needing every ounce of their strength when all hell starts breaking loose on the UFO crash-strewn desert floor.
What in the hell is that? That is a UFO.
Hey guys, come here!
The minutes tick off until a fake UFO lights up the desert night and crashes in a smoldering heap. The question is whether a group of people who think they're trying out for a reality show will believe it.
Do you guys see that?
Then, just before they meet the aliens, we fit them with portable lie detectors called life shirts. These medical tools will measure their vital signs. This data will help us peer inside their minds during their UFO freakout. Now, if you're going to be able to fully analyze a life shirt, it helps to have access to a doctor at Stanford University's School of Medicine. Luckily, we did. His name is Dr. Frank Wilhelm, and he's a human anxiety expert. As he explained, when it comes to the life shirt, your nervous system can run, but it can't hide.
People sometimes want to hide their feelings, so it's an incomplete assessment if you only ask people how they feel. And if you just look at their face, they can try to deceive. All of those parameters the life shirt is measuring also respond very much to emotional activation. And all these kinds of emotions influence these kinds of peripheral parameters that can be measured with the life shirt.
The life shirts are going to tell us just how fast everyone's heart is beating and how heavily they're breathing. Then it's our job to embarrass them with the data.
You can just actually, for that minute, just count the number of breaths. And respiratory rate is 18 breaths per minute.
With Dr. Wilhelm's expert analysis of the life shirt data and corresponding videotape, it's as if our test subjects were strapped down on a table in his Stanford laboratory. No matter where the participants go or what they do, the shirt follows their every thought, feeling, and firing synapse. Here is what the final moments of the experiment look like.
We go forward now minute by minute. Here it's around 9:50 p.m. The breathing is a little accelerated. An important measurement, of course, is this accelerometer to see if she's physically active at this moment. And when we go forward, just looks, her heart rate is a little higher than at baseline, but she's probably talking with people and she's a little bit active here.
We've got the people right where we want them, lulled into an unsuspecting mindset that's designed to slay the impressionable. Chris and Zaz distract our participants as the rest of our crew is spread out all over the desert valley.
See if you can get them to see the UFO.
The crew is ready to deploy the UFO and pull the trigger on more than 60 pounds of explosives. But timing is of the essence in pulling this off with credibility and style. As they say at the horse races, it's post time and the flag is up.
Okay, Julie, let's get the UFO up.
And it's off. The UFO is in motion.
Hey, Julie, when you get up to the main road, turn to the right, going away.
Here's some interesting increase in heart rate, kind of an instability in heart rate from a level of 85 up to 103 beats per minute.
And there's something moving out there, guys. Look at that moving. That is a UFO. Look at
it down. It's going up and down. Next thing you know, you kind of see this green UFO. It's a little tiny green speck, and it's just floating, and then it'll dip down, and then it'll go back up, and it's obviously not a plane. It's obviously nothing that you've ever seen before.
They're taking a bait. They're seeing the UFO. They see the UFO.
I hope they're okay. That's not an airplane. Hey, SARS!
Well, I was mentally prepared to counter some of their arguments, but that wasn't even necessary. The first thought on everyone's mind by that stage was UFO.
Yeah! Come get me!
Oh,
Aussie!
Our experiment couldn't be going any better. It was time to launch the Big Kahuna.
Roll tape and confirm roll. And Frank, I'm going to turn this over to you. The participants are ready.
And 3, 2, 1.
At around 10:02 and 55 seconds, there's a large drop in heart rate. It's very stressed.
First you see these lights go out, just kaboom.
That's when the UFO crashed, I would say. So there must be anxiety.
A couple of seconds later, bam, this shockwave hit you, and though you might not have actually been able to see it, it felt like you could see it as well. It was such a visceral impact.
It's over there. See the smoke?
You guys, what's that smoke?
And that was when everybody truly started going ballistic.
That was insane.
Even one guy ran inside and then came out again.
Hey guys, let's wait for everybody. Come here.
Look at there it is again. Look. In the sky.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Our people are drawn to the crash site like moths to a flame. But are they ready for the real deal? A face-to-face close encounter of the third kind?
What is it? Oh my God.
It's fun hanging out at a place like Stanford University with a smart guy like researcher Dr. Frank Wilhelm.
Here she's at 145 beats per minute. That is very high.
As the doc reviews the data from the elaborate UFO experiment, he paints a vivid picture of creeping anxiety amidst building chaos. Our people were led down one path and then thrust onto another. They were trying out for reality show 1 minute, only to become unwitting UFO guinea pigs the next.
It's over there. See the smoke?
It culminated with their witnessing the crash of a mysterious glowing orb that we've led them to believe is an actual UFO.
Reset cameras. The participants are starting to move now.
What?
When the sonic boom and the crash happened, it was amazing. Everybody went in 4 or 5 different directions. You had one person running off in one direction, chasing the UFO down the desert.
Slow down, hold on, wait up.
I could not believe that they would just go barreling towards something that they had no idea what it was. But honestly, they were so excited, they just didn't care.
Well, we're happy to see the jarring, mind-numbing strain etched all over our subjects' faces. We were even more interested in what was going on internally. That's where our portable medical device known as the Life Shirt came in, measuring the intensity of the crash experience in clear data. Here we have a test subject whose heartbeat is rising, now veering out of control. It's 135 beats a minute. No, it's 140. Wait, now it's 145. Where she stops, nobody knows.
Now she seems to to stop, and her heart rate remains high at about 130 beats per minute, 50 beats per minute above her resting heart rate. She is really buying into that context, and she's reacting as if it's real.
Our production crew hurriedly readies the crash site for the hyperventilating guests of honor.
We're really moving now, guys.
Up from the ground comes a bubbling ooze with a little green slime for good measure.
There should be 150 yards out. I'm starting here.
It was green, it looked like a big air balloon, and it floated all the way down there.
It was clear that people were overwhelmed with what they'd seen and what they'd been doing today. They weren't thinking rationally, they weren't thinking logically about what it was. They just were racing to find out. They were babbling whatever was on their minds, stream of consciousness.
There it is, huh?
No, I don't know.
Right there?
Here they come.
What is it?
I don't know.
We don't know what this is.
Be still, my racing heart. The fantasy likelihood meter may have pointed it low, but her ticker arrives at the crash site pumping on overdrive at a speedy 170 to 182 beats per minute. That's roughly 3 beats every single second.
Oh my God, he has the highest heart rate. That is very significant, very significant. She's very stressed.
Joking me. It's not. Look at this.
Don't touch anything.
Oh my God, who has a camera?
I'd seen the crash site during the daytime, and it looked pretty impressive. But at night, it was a whole different story. You know, any doubts they might have had, I think, were pushed right out of their minds at that point, because they could see these things there. They didn't know what it was.
It's higher than background, but it's not dangerous. But it's probably like picked up some cosmic rays or something.
As if the visuals at the crash site weren't enough, Zaz starts pulling out of his knapsack all these crazy contraptions to check on the radiation at the UFO site.
I'm not picking anything up right now, so it's not emitting gamma.
They believed every word of what Zaz was saying at that point. There was no denying that this was definitely a UFO.
Her heart rate at this point is 160 beats per minute. That is extremely high.
We shouldn't touch it or go too close.
Well, what is it? Is it a beach vehicle?
No, it's
what
a
it is?
UFO.
Her face is just frightened. This is the facial expression of fear. She's not running away, so she's interested. Now this other woman, she's excited, but also fearful. She's having a heart rate of 160, 170 beats per minute. Very activated. He's the explorer, apparently, and he's overriding his fear with courage, and he's actually going there. He has fear too. It's clearly visible in his face, but his behavior is overriding that internal fear.
I'll be damned.
Looks great. They're totally buying it.
What's her joking me?
The hoax is working perfectly. They're totally freaked out. From potential TV stars to wandering around in a radioactive debris field, these Blair Witch commandos have gorged on a smorgasbord of elation, shock, and horror with a side order of green goo. Their life shirt numbers are almost off the charts. Dr. Wilhelm has seen heart rates this high only once before in subjects who thought they were about to die.
Stand by to cue the alien girl.
As with any good hoax, the temptation is there to just see how far you can push it, and that's what we did in this case.
And finally, for the coup de grace, the piece de resistance, the final flourish, an alien strides from the wreckage.
Oh my!
Like the other half of it over there?
Oh my God! I was right. Who is the set decorator? Look at this.
Yeah. Hey, what's happening? Can I go home with you?
The experiment complete. Our subjects share what it all felt like.
Okay, I woohoo! An hour ago.
The UFO that was on this other side that when we first started running out looked so real.
To tell you the truth, as soon as I saw this piece, I wanted to see who or what was powering it, what was in it. And my heart was through the roof.
During our post-crash debrief, we were surprised. A number of the participants denied ever believing that the UFO was real. It's hard to say if that's a function of their true feelings
Nice.
or a case of changing their tune after the fact.
They said all of us stay together and suddenly we're allowed to run and sprint into the desert down it.
Her memory apparently reconfigured the situation and her experience to be consistent with the new reality. But in the moment, she clearly believed it. I mean, we see it in the physiology, we see it in her facial expression.
Yes, hindsight is indeed 20/20. But what the people say they were thinking and feeling at the time could be matched to the data from the life shirts. The body doesn't lie, and neither does the life shirt.
Oh my God. And there's something moving out there, guys. Look, 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 look.
It can gauge who had the anxiety attacks in advance of the hoax revelation and who didn't. So, did a predilection towards fantasy also point to UFO belief? If you compare our predictions of who might believe based on their free-thinking ways, there are some strong trends, but it's clearly more complicated than that.
We're moving fast. This is crazy.
Allison had a high fantasy score of 849 and was ready to be beamed aboard the ship.
If he's alive, he's mine. I'm taking him home.
Rose was also welcoming of an alien at 443.
I didn't really get to see it.
George, with his high score of 732, had an insatiable curiosity
I saw last night. Yo, is it radioactive meth?
and a willingness to believe it could be something unknown. Stephanie, ironically, had a low score of 216 and was not predicted to believe.
Oh my God. What is it?
But Stephanie may have been influenced by group dynamics. She was surrounded by believers.
And there's an effect of emotional contagion. You can see like there's mass hysteria phenomena recorded in human history, mass panics people see in stadiums when there's in a movie theater when there's a fire breaking out. Well, people starts to panic and suddenly everyone starts to panic, and because extreme, intense emotions can be very contagious. And this is an example of that where 3 people in that group apparently believe in that UFO. And this woman that is with them, that usually doesn't believe in these things, clearly gets this kind of contagion, this excitement, that physiological activation.
Oh my God, I was right.
We're ultimately left wondering, were we to have singled out others from the low end of the fantasy inclination scale and surrounded them with the energy and imaginations of these 3, might they have been influenced to react in the same way? And is this what happens during some mass sightings?
The emotions and the experiences that the subjects had were normal. There was nothing abnormal or abnormally gullible or stupid about the subjects that went through this experience. I think these experiments are wonderful insights into the way we as human beings react, both individually and in groups, to the fantastic.
We've seen where myths are created in intense, unexplained emotional experiences. We've seen how free thinking can get us into trouble, as it did for thousands of years until the invention of the scientific method. And finally, we've seen how group dynamics play into our belief systems, where the truths you hold are based on the company you keep. UFOs are unidentified. We should use science to study them and leave our fantasies out of the mix. The bare facts are that some things cannot be completely explained, which is a far cry from concluding that aliens are replacing everybody with pod people.
Still to come tonight, our movie at 10 is Night of the Living Dead. But first, more paranormal investigations as we explore Britain's haunted hotspots after the break.